Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Last week we mentioned this is a series on the factors of enlightenment, the requisites of enlightenment, Bodhi Dhamma. That means those factors which contribute towards enlightenment and they lead to enlightenment, and the development of these factors is the purpose of spiritual life. So last week we mentioned about, we gave a simile to illustrate how these Bodhipakya Dhammas are to be cultivated. The first simile was on the royal dana, the dana given by the king. I had also mentioned that if you all, those who are here, who have been listening, if you can recall this, it will make matters very easy. We can go forward rather fast. I will briefly recall anyway. So now the king of the country heard that a group of arahats were staying in a sort of retreat, a jungle retreat with a rocky mountain in the middle of it. The forest area was very beautiful. There was a river all around that range of hill, and not very far from the the villages. There are many villages all around, and people had great reverence for these yogi monks. And so the king heard, and he declared the area to be a Megadaya. That means a sanctuary for wildlife. So it was indeed a very peaceful and very calm and silent place where people used to visit the saints and receive their blessings. So king decided also on the full moon day of July, that is the Varsavasa, the rain's retreat, that he would like to offer a dana, an alms offering to all the arhats who lived in that place for that particular rainy season. And so he sent his ministers beforehand and invited them, the arhats, and they agreed. So on that, on the full moon day, the king had already, he had established some kind of a tent village. That is a camp consisting of all kinds of structures, all tents, and some, there were two main buildings, one the dining, Dhanasala, and the other the Dhamma hearing, the Dhammasala. So these monks arrived on that day exactly at 6 a.m. in the morning, as usual, for their morning pratarasa, that is the morning alms round, and they received kanji and some liquid food and some other eatables, and that was their breakfast. So as usual, the monks came and all in one line, and people from surrounding villages, and the king had come with a big retinue of his officials and others, and the citizens too had flocked there. So the monks were received with great reverence, and they were offered with the kanji breakfast. They had it. Then they went and sat down from the dining shala or hall. to the Dhamma hall, where they were supposed to hear the Dhamma. They gave the discourses and the others listened to the discourses. So now, on that first day, the 4 arhats were chosen to give discourses, the topic being mindfulness as the source of emancipation. We had, if you remember, we had defined what exactly is meant by Bodhi, enlightenment. The subject in this series is Bodhi Pakya Dhamma, the factors which lead to the attainment of Bodhi, enlightenment, which simply means a state of emancipation. There are 2 concepts which I mentioned last time. One is the concept of emancipation. The other is the concept of being awakened, waking up into the reality from a state of delusion and mental darkness, ignorance. So, this theme, you see, this emancipation to achieve in its very perfect form, in the ultimate form, leading to liberation from samsaric existence, the worldly existence. One has to cultivate those factors which, when perfected, brought about emancipation, that is to say, enlightenment. So the emancipation idea, last time we mentioned, that of the American blacks. They were all slaves. They were in a terrible, terrible condition indeed, and beaten and hanged, and for the slightest thing tortured, and awful state. Then they were emancipated by Abraham Lincoln, and that became, you see, high point in the unfoldment of American democracy and the economic progress, etc. Now, just imagine after emancipation, how they have gone through the process of emancipation. It was a process. It was not that suddenly they all became free and they became equal to the others, that is the whites and so on. No. They were under a lot of restrictions for a long time indeed. But after the Second World War, round about there, you see, they had their emancipation in a very, very visible, evident way. So today they have a black president. The emancipation has led to that. From the state of a slave to the state of a president of this country. So liberation or emancipation simply means that a complete transformation of a society, of a people, of a polity, of an economic system, a whole range of a civilization as such. Now, if you extrapolate this idea to spirituality, to the field of spirituality, emancipation simply means the being freed from the state of bondage, bond. You see, to be bonded, to be bound or fettered. The jailbirds are all fettered. All the prisoners are fettered in prisons. They are fettered and bound and tortured and all that. Once they are emancipated from the jail, they are freed from all those. And they enjoy freedom in a way that they, you see, they can achieve happiness and all all the attributes of civilized life. Now, this emancipation is something that has to be felt moment to moment. So now to give you an example, the word bondage or fetter is known as sangyojana. See, sangyojana is a technical term in Buddhism and very, very important term in it. And there are 10 such fetters that bind us in samsaric existence. And when we are able to break asunder these bondages, these fetters, it is then that the mind gets fully transformed and one becomes enlightened, liberated from the wheel of being born again and again, dying again and again, and being reborn again and again ad infinitum, endlessly. Now the idea of samsara is just that, to be born again and again, die again and again, being reborn again and so on. So this whole process of bondage that worldly existence as such brings about, the end of it is spiritual emancipation. Now, how the bondage occurs, it is something that every spiritual seeker should understand. It is said, Sangyojanam iti sangyojeti anto adhyattikam bahirikena sangyojeti. That means our inner world, which is the world of the mind, gets interlocked with the external world, and this interlocking of the external and the internal world brings about the question of, you see, you like an object or you dislike or you are neutral, and the mind gets activated and then ultimately gets a whole, a whole series of mental activities. A kind of chain reaction that occurs. One triggers the other and so on, and one gets in a state of mental bondage. How it happens is very simple. Now, for instance, the 5 senses, eye, ear, nose, etc., they are all the senses, sensory world, which are a part of the body. Our, you see, ultimately, if you look at life, you see, it ends up as nothing but nama rupa, mind-body combination, psycho-physical combination. That is what we are, ultimately. The name that we give, all kinds of things that we aropam, we put on ourselves, are just conventional means of organizing a conventional way of living. So otherwise, from the ultimate standpoint, you see, if you say who a man or a woman is just nothing but mind and matter, nothing but name. You see, nama simply means the world of mind, and rupa, the mind, the world of matter or physical world, body. So now, being equipped with all these senses, and which also form the base for our consciousness, you see. So, you have an eye, you are equipped with the eye, therefore automatically you see things. You see visible objects, and when you see a visible object, you like it, and if you like it, you desire it. If you don't like it, you are repelled from it, so you want to get rid of it. That also is a kind of desire to get rid of. So desire. That's what this interaction brings about. And desire grows into craving. And craving grows into attachment. What you crave, that you cling to. When you keep on craving, you keep on clinging to what you crave. And by clinging, you develop attachment. And once the attachments are developed, that is it. That is where the mind, you see, these attachments trigger a process of karmic activity. You commit a particular karma. So, the desire or the craving is a mental pollutant. It pollutes the mind and thereby makes the mind weak, debilitated, and distorted, is unable to see what the reality is. So with craving goes ignorance or delusion. So craving and delusion go together, or ignorance. You can't separate them. And this is how karma is committed, and you keep on. A karma means an action in three ways: bodily, verbal and mental. And an action is something that has the potency or the power or capacity to produce a result which is compatible to itself. So now, if you commit, say, an action like punching somebody's nose, you get back another punch on your nose. That is what it is. You invite that. If you do something evil, you also get pain, suffering because of that. If you do something good, you also, as a result of that, you also become happy, peaceful, and progress, prosperity, all these things. So good and bad actions ultimately, you see, determine our destiny. What we will be in future will be decided by how we live now. And this how we live now simply means how we act now. Ultimately, life is reducible to just one factor, that is the action, the fact of being involved in an act. You act in some way or other, either bodily or verbally, speak or think. If you don't speak, if you don't act, at least your mind is active, it's all the time working. You can't stop the mind working. You see, stop it work. It works. So now these threefold activities or actions, when they are based on will or volition or intention, they are a very, very powerful action indeed, which form the ingredient of our future existence, of our destiny. So, due to these interactions between the senses and the external objects, which drag the mind therewith, the mind gets dragged along with this as soon as the contact between the two occurs and the interlocking occurs, the mind gets dragged. So the internal world of mind and the external world, they get interlocked. And all kinds of, and this process, this brings about a kind of whole chain reaction and series of activities and leading to karma. And once you are involved in karma in action, the result of it will have to be experienced. And some results are experienced here and now in this very life. Some are experienced in the next, or the next, or the next. So, you see, this is the course of life. So, bondage therefore means this bonding of the mind with the external world. So you become aware of the external world, and if this awareness is a distorted one, then only all the wrong types of activities follow, wrong unwholesome karmas are committed, and you get in the samsaric existence ad infinitum, endlessly, come and go, come and go, come and go and die. That's it, that's the story. So now, this bondage to be free, emancipated, therefore, what needs to be done is cultivate mindfulness. Mindfulness is just the ability to attend one thing at a time. That is, focus the mind on one thing at a time and be clearly aware and alert of Jagriti. Be mentally awake and alert about that particular transaction, which is called, the transaction called being mindful, being attentive, being heedful. So when you are attentive mentally, this attentiveness is mindfulness. You are mindful of it, so your mind is fully aware of this. And it is this which is the tool, the primary tool for bringing about freedom, emancipation from this bondage, which goes on from moment to moment till we live. The whole life is just that. At the end of life, due to this interlocking, bonding of the internal and the external world, at the end of life, when you have to face the critical moment of death, at that time what happens? You see, at the last thought, which determines the first thought of the next life. So in the last thought is based upon some object which is received from any one of these five senses or the mind. Mind is also a sense, a mental sense, and is far more complex and far more, vast in range, and very comprehensive indeed. What you see, after seeing you may forget about it, but then you remember it with the mind. It becomes an object of the mind, and you relive it. Relive that experience again, and the same karmic process goes on again, and you keep on accumulating karmic potencies in this way. That is how the bondage occurs from moment to moment, and at the end, the last thought moment, which has a certain image again, mental image, as the object of the mental sense, that triggers into the next moment is the rebirth consciousness. So that triggers the rebirth consciousness, and rebirth consciousness determines the next life, what you are going to be in the future, and that the rebirth consciousness, the first consciousness, will determine that. Your whole course of existence in the next life will be determined by that first consciousness, rebirth consciousness. Now, so that also is another meaning of the word bond. Bondage or sangyojanam. Sang plus yojanam. That which fetters one thing with the other. It's like the chain link, you see. You have got the links, one gets, hooked into the other. So, interlinking. So, the last thought moment of this life and the first thought moment of the next, they get interlinked. They get, by this fetter. Now, what are these fetters? They are mental factors ultimately. For instance, I sense, the sense of ego, myself, I am, my family, my country, my this, my that. That's a terrible, terrible fetter indeed. And so on, there are 10 such fetters. I am going to deal all this thing in detail during the course of this series. But today this much. How the interlinking occurs, how the fettering of the mind with the external objects and thereby giving rise to all kinds of karmas and karma producing rebirth. This wheel of life, how it goes on. So now, on the first day, if you remember, last time we mentioned, the arhats had their meals, the morning alms meal breakfast, and then they went and sat down in that place. 4 arhats were assigned the job of giving discourse on the subject of mindfulness. And that is to say, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. What does it mean? Foundations means there are 4 ways, or there are 4 bases based on which you can cultivate your mindfulness. And what are these 4? One is all bodily movements. Kaya anupassana. Kaya plus anupassana. The process of being mindful of anything kaya, any bodily activity, any bodily function. Now, for instance, breathing is a bodily function. It's automatic, you can't help it. You are breathing in and breathing out. So now, in and out is a process. Now, if you can focus your attention on this in and out respiration or breathing, this focusing of the mind on the breathing itself will make the breathing calm. The more you are focused on the breath, the more the breath becomes calm and settled, and calmer the breath, calmer the mind, because breath and mind are closely linked. So once the breath becomes calm, the mind too becomes calm. And when the mind becomes calm, it becomes more stable. That is more manageable. You can manage, you can handle the mind more easily. Otherwise, it just fizzles out, it's very, very difficult to handle. So now, once you are, by focusing your mind, that is by becoming mindful of the process called in-breath and out-breath, this focusing on the breath. And there are very many points where you can do that, just below the nostril or at the abdomen. There are many points, and one cannot be dogmatic about this. There are some meditation teachers who become dogmatic. They say, no, only in the nose, nonsense. It can be done in at the abdomen level successfully and effectively as in the nostril. So, in the practice of meditation, please remember, one can never be very, very cocksure and say only this and not any other. You are dealing with mind, not with the point on which you focus the mind. That must be remembered. There are some teacher who goes on dogmatizing, and the serious meditators must note that. Whichever point is suitable for your temperament, whether it is the nostril or it is the abdomen, where if you breathe in, the abdomen expands, it rises. If you breathe out, it contracts and it falls. So whether you expand, you see, focus your mind on the rise and fall movement at the abdomen, which for most people are very effective, or whether you are focusing it on the nostril at the entrance point, which is also a bodily impression, the touch impression. As the breath touches the point, you have a touch impression. You feel a touch and mindfulness of that touch impression. That is what you do. at that point. In the abdomen too, it is the same thing. It is a touch impression ultimately. Though you are focusing on the movement, but the movement refers to a touch. So in this way, as you practice, you will see the mind becomes calm and stable and therefore concentrated. And once the mind is stable and concentrated and calm, the mind becomes a very, very powerful phenomenon. There is nothing that the mind cannot do. And so, by generating the internal power through concentration, with the help of mindfulness, one can raise the consciousness from the level of the Kamaloka in which we are, the human world, into the dimension, the very sublime dimension of the Brahma gods, the Rupa Loka, Rupavachara. And there the mind becomes so concentrated and focused, so calm and so peaceful, and so sublimated, it enters into a state of samadhi, ecstatic absorption. You can remain in samadhi for hours and hours and hours without being aware of this, any sensory experience at all. So now, the purpose of meditation, of course, is not just to get samadhi and thereby acquire all kinds of psychic powers or supernormal powers, like you fly. There are all kinds of supernormal power. You read somebody's thought, somebody's mind, all kinds of things can be done. But that's not the goal of spiritual. That's like you acquiring knowledge and you become a great pandit and you can talk a lot and all that sort of thing. No, these are talents of some kind. The purpose of meditation and development of mindfulness is emancipation of the mind, liberation of the mind. That comes from you develop the samadhi and then you practice what is called vipassana, penetrating into the reality behind an experience. When you get the samadhi, you penetrate into the reality of that experience. And you will see that the reality is the same as in any experience, and namely anicca, dukkha, anatta. That it is in a dynamic state of change. It's changing from moment to moment. And whatever is changing cannot be stable. The basic instability that the mind suffers from is because of this law of impermanence. Nothing is permanent. Everything is changing, therefore is unstable and therefore unsatisfactory. Dukkha. Dukkha does not mean only pain, bodily pain or mental pain. It also means a metaphysical suffering in the form of this being subjected to impermanence. You develop a family, a whole life you have toiled and developed, and suddenly you die and everything is over. You carry nothing with yourself except the bundle of karma that you have developed, you have accumulated meanwhile. So that's a very dramatic way of seeing impermanence. Death. Death is a dramatization of the law of impermanence. So once you by vipassana you see all these, you experience them. See doesn't mean with the eye, but with the mental eye. But after a time, not even with the mental eye, but with the eye of wisdom. Wisdom is not just knowledge. Wisdom is penetrating into the reality of an experience. So with this reality, intuitive reality-based, based knowledge or wisdom, you are able to free the mind from the bondage and cut asunder, destroy all the fetters. So the mind is transformed once for all. So if you continue to live having achieved the liberation of the mind, thereafter you see you are a liberated, enlightened saint, enlightened person who now starts enlightening others. That is how things work. Now, so these four Satipatthana's, last time I mentioned a little bit, today also I have mentioned. Next time I will go further. But next time I would like to discuss on what is called mindfulness as an indriya. Indriya means a faculty, and faculty means an original power of the mind and the potency. So that will be the subject next time. With this I conclude. May the blessings of Bhagavan Buddha, his Dhamma and Sangha surround your lives with wisdom and well-being. May you all be happy. Sukhino bhavantu.